In a surprise move, the Commons voted 312 to 308, the majority of 4, in favour of an amendment tabled by Tory former Cabinet Minister Dame Caroline Spelman. Sarah Newton has resigned as a minister at the Department for Work and Pensions over the Brexit vote. Bookies have now suspended betting on the next minister to jump ship. Mrs. Newton voted for the proposal to stop a no-deal and was among several Tory frontbenchers who rebelled in tonight's vote. 12 other ministers abstained in the vote on the government motion, including 4 members of Theresa May's cabinet. The Commons voted 312 to 308, the majority of 4, in favour of a cross-party amendment tabled by Dame Caroline Spelman, rejecting a no-deal Brexit. The vote was later confirmed by a more emphatic 321 votes to 278, overriding a government motion tabled by Mrs. May which would have rejected no deal on the scheduled date of March 29, but left it on the table for other times. Read more. European leaders FUROUS after May's Brexit defeat, a cabinet source said. A significant number of ministers made it clear that they could not vote against Spelman in these circumstances, and it was understood that they would not have to. Among those who abstained were Work and Pensions Secretary Amber Rudd, Scottish Secretary David Mundell, Justice Secretary David Gauke and Business Secretary Greg Clark. Other ministers who abstained included Robert Buckland, Alistair Burt, Tobias Ellwood, Richard Harrington, Margot James, Anne Milton, Stephen Hammond and Claire Perry. Health Minister Mr. Hammond said, "Tonight the government whips asked me to vote against the motion, as amended, to reject no deal. I could not do this as I regard no deal as a disaster. Therefore I abstained." Despite being a government minister, Downing Street said ministers who voted against the whip tonight will be expected to resign, but those who abstained will not. Scroll down for live updates. Theresa May has suffered another bruising night in the House of Commons. Image Getty. 1 a.m. update. Campbell tells Parliament to do the democratic thing and more from BBC Newsnight. Tony Blair's aide Alistair Campbell has said he believes another referendum will not lead to civil unrest. He told the show, "You say to the British people, on the basis of what you now know, do you wish to proceed? That's a perfectly democratic thing to do." 11:40 p.m. update. Tracy claims it's inconceivable that minister who voted against the PM can stay. Craig Tracy, who quit over Brexit, said, "I had to resign when I voted against the first meaningful vote, understood that, due to collective responsibility, even though it was a relatively minor position, I was bound by that code. It is inconceivable that any minister defying a 3-line whip can stay in position." Farage has aired his view on the latest vote in Parliament. Image Getty. 11:27 p.m. update. Farage, a total disgrace. Nigel Farage has blasted those in Parliament following today's vote. He posted on Twitter, "A total disgrace. Parliament no longer represents the people. This is a Parliament of outright liars. We will have to fight them again, and mark my words, we will beat them once more." 11:23 p.m. update. They should resign. Jenkins calls for rebel ministers to step down. Chatting on ITV's Peston, Conservative MP Andrea Jenkins claims any minister who voted against the government should resign. She added, "We're in this mess because at the top there is no strong leadership. It's a sad state of affairs." 11:11 p.m. update. Co-founder of Vote Leave ridicules Conservatives' Douglas Carswell, who defected from the Tories to UKIP in 2014, has slated his old party following the vote this evening. On Twitter he wrote, 3 months ago Conservative MPs had the opportunity of replacing Mrs. May with someone else. They chose not to. Bad call. 11:04 p.m. update. May's deal to go to Parliament before next Wednesday. BBC talking on BBC Newsnight. The show's political editor, Nicholas Watt, has predicted Mrs. May's deal, which was roundly rejected on Tuesday, will go back to Parliament. He told the programme, "It's pretty clear that by next Wednesday, the day before the Prime Minister goes to the European Council, she will put her deal to Parliament again." Mrs. May's deal has already been rejected twice. 10:56 p.m. update. I'm not going to lose MP involved in heated exchange with Sky News host Brexiteer Mark Francois was involved in a tense row with Sky News deputy political editor Beth Rigby following this evening's vote. The argument was sparked after the reporter demanded to know why Mr. Francois refused to back the Prime Minister's deal. He fired back, "Because it means we don't leave the European Union." You can read more about the fiery exchange here. Clive Hammond taking over live reporting from Simon Osborne. 10:06 p.m. update. Rees-Mogg hints at support for May deal. Jacob Rees-Mogg has hinted he could be persuaded to back the Theresa May's Brexit deal if it came before the Commons again in a third meaningful vote. Asked if he would vote against the withdrawal agreement a third time, he said, "We will have to see if there is any change. There are discussions today in relation to what Geoffrey Cox has had to say to the DUP and, crucially, what may be put in the withdrawal and implementation bill, which could have an effect on how people vote. So I'm not the immovable object facing the irresistible force." 9:35 p.m. update. Yvette Cooper issues statement after shock result. Labour MP Yvette Cooper, who pushed the Spelman amendment to a vote in the Commons, has issued a statement about tonight's developments. She said, "The House of Commons has voted decisively tonight against the chaos of no deal. We're in this position because the Prime Minister has refused to consult or build consensus, and refused to allow votes on other Brexit options. That needs to be urgently sorted out now. The government should come forward with plans to hold indicative votes on different options, including a customs union, so we can get on with this. If the Prime Minister won't sort this out and build some consensus on the way forward, then Parliament will need to instead." 9:12 p.m. update. Third meaningful vote now a possibility. Theresa May has held out the prospect of a third meaningful vote on her EU withdrawal agreement within the next week after MPs dramatically voted to rule out a no-deal Brexit. A government motion for debate in the House of Commons tomorrow offers to seek a one-off extension delaying Brexit to June 30 if MPs approve the deal negotiated with the EU by next Wednesday. But the Prime Minister warned, if the deal, which has already been twice rejected by massive majorities, is not approved, a longer extension will be needed, requiring Britain to take part in the European Parliament elections in May. She said, "I do not think that would be the right outcome, but the House needs to face up to the consequences of the decisions it has taken." Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn told MPs Mrs May had repeatedly offered a choice between her deal and no deal, adding, "In the last 24 hours, Parliament has decisively rejected both." 8.44 update. European Commission responds to latest Commons vote. A European Commission spokesperson said, "We take note of the votes in the House of Commons this evening. There are only two ways to leave the EU, with or without a deal. The EU is prepared for both. To take no deal off the table, it is not enough to vote against no deal. You have to agree to a deal. We have agreed a deal with the Prime Minister and the EU is ready to sign it." 8:01 p.m. update. Corbyn says Brexit delay now inevitable. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said extending Article 50 was now inevitable. He said, "In the last 24 hours Parliament has decisively rejected both her deal and no deal, while an extension of Article 50 is now inevitable. Responsibility for that extension lies solely and squarely at the Prime Minister's door, calling on Parliament to take control." Mr Corbyn said MPs must now find a compromise solution, including a people's vote, as that's what we were elected to do. 7:57 p.m. update. May warns no deal remains default position. Theresa May has told the House of Commons a no-deal Brexit remains the default position despite tonight's result. She said MPs will vote tomorrow on an extension to Article 50, which could involve a short delay to implement a deal agreed in the next few days, or a longer delay if no agreement is reached. She said, "The House has today provided a clear majority against leaving without a deal. However, I will repeat what I said before. These are about the choices this House faces. The legal default in EU and UK law is that the UK will leave without a deal unless something else is agreed. The onus is now on every one of us in this House to find out what that is. The options before us are the same as they always have been. MPs have rejected leaving the EU without a deal. Image AFP Getty 7:48 p.m. Update MPs back government motion on no-deal Brexit. MPs have supported the amended government motion which rejects a no-deal Brexit at any time and under any circumstances by 321 votes to 238, majority 43.7.45 p.m. Update. This could implode by mistake. BBC political editor Laura Kunsberg tweeted, "So, the main vote is now on whether UK can ever leave the EU without a deal. Because of earlier Spelman vote, government is now said to be trying to force its own MPs to vote against its own motion. Frankly, things so chaotic. This could implode by mistake." 7:42 p.m. Update. Rees-Mogg dismisses significance of shock result. European Research Group Chairman Jacob Rees-Mogg said the Spelman amendment ruling out a no-deal Brexit under any circumstances had no legal force. He told Sky News, "We live under a system of law and a motion passed in Parliament does not override the law. Both UK and EU law has March 29th as the leaving date, regardless of the vote. This vote is very interesting, and the government may or may not pay attention to it, but it is not binding. It is not law." 7:30 p.m. Update. MPs reject Malthouse Compromise amendment. MPs have rejected an amendment which includes seeking to delay Brexit until May 22 by 374 votes to 164, majority 210.7.23 p.m. Update. Ministerial resignations could be imminent. The passing of the Spelman amendment has thrown tonight's votes into chaos. Theresa May might now have to whip MPs to vote against her own motion, as the passing of the amendment means MPs would now have to rule out no deal under any circumstances. The Prime Minister has continued to say ruling out no deal permanently would be a bad option, but initially gave Tories a free vote on her motion to avoid a walkout by cabinet ministers who oppose a no-deal Brexit. Sam Coates from The Times tweeted resignations could be imminent from senior Tory Remainers if they were ordered to reject the government motion. 7:17 p.m. Update. MPs have voted to reject a no-deal Brexit at any time or under any circumstances. MPs have supported an amendment to reject a no-deal Brexit at any time and under any circumstances by 312 votes to 308, a majority of 4. There has been another night of high drama in the Commons. Image PA 7 p.m. Update. Fox concludes debate for government. International Trade Secretary Liam Fox has concluded the no-deal Brexit debate on behalf of the government. He told MPs the Commons contacted out its decision-making to the people at the time of the EU referendum in 2016 and that Parliament was honour-bound to accept the result. He said, "There is no worse outcome for this House, this country and our democracy than to have no Brexit. We have been given a clear instruction by the people of Britain, and in the days ahead we in this House must decide who in our democracy are the masters and who are the servants." 6:31 p.m. Update. Prime Minister like a rabbit in the headlights. Theresa May has been described as a rabbit in the headlights by Labour MP Jess Phillips, who said Mrs May was too frightened of Brexiteers in her party to really say how bad a no-deal Brexit would be for Britain. Ms Phillips said, "The single thing that has been missing from the very beginning of this horrid and torrid affair in British politics was any semblance of leadership and courage to take the country somewhere with them." She said she was not frightened of the people in her Birmingham Yardley constituency who voted to leave, saying if they do not like her views they can vote her out. Ms Phillips told MPs, "I wish the Prime Minister had not been made to be frightened of the people who sat behind her. She's certainly terrified of the people in the country." 6:16 p.m. Update. Damian Green moves no-deal Brexit amendment. Former Cabinet Minister Damian Green has moved his amendment in the Commons, stating one of the purposes was to avoid a cliff-edge no-deal Brexit for which it's clear the country as a whole and in particular many of our major industries are not prepared. He said, "I think that no deal on March 29th would be a disaster for the economy of the country. Voting against no deal does not mean that a deal will magically emerge. This House has to agree a deal and that deal needs to be acceptable to the EU. We can pass motions ruling out no deal until we're blue in the face, but it will make no difference unless there are options that this House will support. He said the principal aim of the amendment was to make sure that Brexit is as smooth as possible for citizens and businesses. Theresa May arrives at the Houses of Parliament for another crunch Brexit vote. Image Reuters, 5:36 p.m. Update. Varadkar accuses Brexiteers of chasing unicorns. Irish Premier Leo Varadkar has said the people who advocated Brexit have been chasing unicorns for a very long time. Speaking to the press at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington, Mr. Varadkar said, "As we head into the next few weeks, it should be blatantly obvious that unicorns only exist in fairy tales. I would say to people who advocated Brexit, is this really what they wanted? Protectionism, borders, tariffs, restrictions on trade, is this really what Brexit was all about? And for those who voted against the withdrawal agreement on the basis that they feared that Northern Ireland would be treated differently as a result of the backstop, it must be evident to them now that it's the UK government's intention to treat Northern Ireland differently." Brexit protests in Westminster ahead of tonight's vote. Image PA, 4:31 p.m. Update. Starmer wants no deal, dead and buried. Shadow Brexit Secretary Sir Keir Starmer said he wanted to see the mantra of my deal or no deal dead and buried in the tonight's vote. He told the Commons debate on this side of the House, "We have never accepted there should be a binary choice between the Prime Minister's deal or no deal. Between very bad or even worse is not a meaningful choice, and it would be a very sorry end to the negotiations." Yesterday the House overwhelmingly voted to reject the first of those options, the Prime Minister's deal. Today we have the chance to reject the second, and we should do so with as big majority as possible. The mantra of my deal or no deal needs to be dead and buried tonight. Sir Keir Starmer addresses the Commons ahead of tonight's crunch vote. Image AFP Getty, 4:15 p.m. Update. No deal vote like the Titanic voting for the iceberg to get out of the way. EU Deputy Brexit negotiator Sabine Wayad has said EMP's decision to resurrect plans already rejected by Brussels countless times shows Parliament is divorced from reality. Speaking at a closed-door meeting of EU ambassadors this morning, Ms. Wayand's comments made reference to the Malthouse Compromise, a variant of plans rejected by Brussels numerous times on the grounds the technology required did not exist. Quoting private remarks by Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, Ms. Wayand also said the decision to vote for no deal was like the Titanic voting for the iceberg to get out of the way. 4 p.m. Update. Gove tells MPs it's make your mind up time. Michael Gove told the Commons as a result of last night's vote to reject the Prime Minister's deal, "We face a series of unpalatable choices." He told MPs the government's motion would ensure Britain did not leave the EU on March 29 without a deal. But he added, "This House has to decide what it wants. It is now make your mind up time for this House." Michael Gove opens the Brexit debate for the government. Image AFP Getty, 3:49 p.m. Update. Cooper calls for clarification on no deal motion. Labour's Yvette Cooper has asked Michael Gove to confirm that, if the government motion is approved, the UK will not leave the EU on the 29th of March without a deal. Mr. Gove said that is what the motion is designed to prevent, but said it did not take no deal off the table. He said that could only be achieved by passing a deal or revoking Article 50.3.39 p.m. Update. Hilary Benn renews calls for Article 50 extension. Commons Brexit Committee Chairman Hilary Benn said time had ran out and an extension to Article 50 was now essential. He said, after another historic defeat for the Prime Minister, the UK will now have to apply for an extension to Article 50. The extension will need to be of sufficient length to allow Parliament to reach agreement on a proposal that it is prepared to support. The clock has now been run down to the point where there is no alternative left, given that leaving with no deal cannot be the policy of any responsible government. Parliament must now be given the chance to hold a series of indicative votes as quickly as possible, or else we will not find out what there might be support for as an alternative to the Prime Minister's deal, which has now been rejected twice by large majorities. 3:13 p.m. Update. MPs to vote on no deal and Brexit delay amendments. Commons Speaker John Bercow has told MPs he has selected two amendments to Theresa May's no-deal Brexit motion. They're Amendment A, tabled by Conservative former Minister Dame Caroline Spelman, and which rejects a no-deal Brexit at any time and under any circumstances. Amendment F, in the name of Conservative former Minister Damian Green, and which calls for a delay to Brexit Day from March 29 to May 22 to give time for preparations to leave without a deal. It says the government should then offer a standstill agreement with the EU and its member states, lasting up to the end of 2021 at the latest, during which the UK would pay into EU budgets and observe legal obligations while a permanent relationship is negotiated. 2:54 p.m. Update. SNP says Brexit picture is bleak. SNP Deputy Leader and Economy spokeswoman Kirsty Blackman said there was no certainty about the future health of the economy, adding, "What is clear, however, is that Brexit is bad for the economy. So far the picture is bleak." She said no deal would have a severe impact on the economy, as she called on the Chancellor to commit to voting against no deal tonight. Ms. Blackman said the spring statement was a damp squib, and in the current circumstances Mr. Hammond should have brought forward an emergency budget. 2:51 p.m. Update. Number 10 offers clarity on Malthouse Amendment vote. Downing Street insisted Tory MPs are being given a free vote on the so-called Malthouse Amendment, which aims for the UK to leave the EU without a deal, but also secure a transition period until the end of December 2021. 2:32 p.m. Update. Tusk pokes fun at Brexit with another Instagram post. The European Council President shared a letter from a 6-year-old English girl, featuring an apparently pointed message to Brexit-backing MPs. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Tusk, I live in Britain. I know we are leaving the EU, but I think we should be friends. From Sophie, aged 6." Mr. Tusk responded in his social media post by writing, "We will always be friends, Sophie," but the letter also included a drawing of a unicorn, a term which has been used as slang for the unrealistic plans pursued by Brexiteers during the Brexit negotiations. The European Parliament's Brexit coordinator Guy Verhofstadt said the letter put everything in perspective. He tweeted, "Sometimes it takes
a child to put everything in perspective. What a terrible waste."
The little girl. Image. Instagram. 2:18 p.m. Update. May will not open Brexit debate tonight. The Prime Minister's lost voice and sore throat means Michael Gove will now open the no-deal Brexit debate, while Liam Fox will close it. 1:46 p.m. Update. Hammond will vote against no deal. The Chancellor will join Mrs. May in voting against a no-deal Brexit in Parliament on Wednesday, a spokesman for his department said. Earlier, Mrs. May said she would back the government's motion, which states that Parliament rejects leaving the EU without a deal on March 29, but notes that leaving without an agreement remains the legal default unless a deal is agreed. The spokesman said Mr. Hammond would vote the same way as May. Independent group member Chuka Amuna asked Mr. Hammond, "Growth is now forecast to be 1.2% and 1.4% in 2019 and 2020, and it's worth reflecting on the fact that before the EU referendum it was forecast to be 2.1%. In each of those years, now growth over the forecast period of under 2% is sluggish. It's unimpressive and will exacerbate if we fall off a cliff and leave without a deal. Can the Chancellor tell this House, because I think we need the benefit of knowing before we vote whether he will be voting against us leaving without a deal this evening when we have a vote on the motion?" Mr. Hammond replied, "Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will be voting against us leaving without a deal. I have always believed that leaving without a deal would be bad for the UK economy. That continues to be my view." 1:12 p.m. Update. Options for Brexit are limited. Merkel. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the EU goal was still an orderly withdrawal. She said, "We have not given up the goal of an orderly exit for Britain, but yesterday's events mean the options have become narrower." Mrs. Merkel said she would be able to say how things might proceed only after the next votes in the British Parliament. When asked about her view on a possible delay in Brexit, the German leader said, "Only after these can we, the EU 27, look on a profound basis on how we go forward. 12:46 p.m. update. Philip Hammond predicts Britain's economy forecast to grow faster than Germany, delivering his spring statement. The Chancellor said that Tuesday's vote to reject the EU withdrawal agreement leaves a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the economy, and his most urgent task is to lift it. He said forecasts show Britain's economy will grow faster than Germany's over the coming years. Mr. Hammond told MPs, despite the slowing world economy, the OBR expects Britain to continue to grow in every year, at 1.2% this year, then 1.4% in 2020 and 1.6% in each of the final 3 years. Growth over the 5 years is now slightly higher than the budget forecast. Brexit protesters demonstrate outside the Houses of Parliament. Image Getty. 12:33 p.m. update. Brexit has damaged Britain's reputation. Business Secretary Greg Clark said Brexit uncertainty has hindered investment and damaged Britain's reputation. He told Parliament's Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee, "I think the uncertainty that continues, I'm afraid to say I know for a fact, has stopped investments being made that otherwise would have been proceeded with," he said. Firms have been forced to waste money on preparations, including stockpiling, and urged MPs to prevent a disastrously damaging no deal. Mr. Clark said, "I'm afraid the failure to resolve our relationship with the European Union counts against that Britain's reputation, and I think it is immensely damaging." 12:26 p.m. update. No deal Brexit will cause unprecedented harm, he said. Does the Prime Minister really want to be the first Prime Minister in history to deliberately plunge the UK economy into recession? Referring to the Chancellor's spring statement, Mrs. May replied, "I'm pleased to say that will show the strength of the UK economy, of which Scotland is able to participate as a member of the UK." Mr. Blackford replied, "In 16 days the UK runs the risk of crashing out of the EU with a no deal, and we know from the government's own analysis that that will crash the economy. Why doesn't the Prime Minister show some leadership today, do the right thing and whip all her MPs to take no deal off the table on the 29th of March and forever?" Mrs. May responded, "You can only take no deal off the table by doing one of two things: revoke Article 50, which means betraying the vote of the referendum, or agree a deal. He wants to take no deal off the table. He should have voted for the deal." Brexit news. Philip Hammond has delivered his spring statement. Image Getty. 12:18 p.m. update. May says Corbyn's vote brings no deal closer. Mrs. May, with her voice still croaky, said the Labour leader repeatedly votes in a way that brings no deal closer, and said his proposals have been rejected by MPs. She added, "I may not have my own voice, but I understand the voice of the country. They want to leave the European Union, end free movement, have our own trade policy, ensure laws are made in this country and judged in our courts. That's what the deal delivers. That's what I continue to work to deliver. He used to believe that too. Why is he just trying to frustrate it?" Mr. Corbyn, in his reply, said, "I do have sympathy with the Prime Minister on her voice, and I hope it soon recovers. I understand how painful this is." 12:01 p.m. update. Theresa May faces Corbyn for PMQSDHE. Prime Minister continues to stand by her Brexit deal, which was defeated in the House of Commons last night. She said, "I want to leave the EU with a good deal. I believe we have a good deal. Yes, no deal is better than a bad deal, but I will be working to leave the EU on the 29th of March with a good deal." Brexit news. Theresa May has begun this afternoon's PMQs. Image PA. 11:44 a.m. update. Brexit is tragic mistake. Italian MEP Roberto Gualtieri said, "Brexit will always be a tragic mistake for us. However, the EU has worked constructively to ensure that the UK leaves the European Union in an orderly way. It is clear, for the agreement on the joint binding declaration, that the EU continued to do so until the very last minute. There will be no further concessions. The agreement is final," but he suggested the EU would be open to welcoming the UK back into the bloc. He said, "If the British Parliament rejects the agreement, then it will be necessary to change our approach. We will always be open to a closer relationship between the EU and the UK, as well as a possible change of mind regarding the serious historical mistake of Brexit. 11:41 am. Update: EU asks, are Brexiteers willing to pay the price for Brexit? Frans Timmermans asks Brexiteers, are you willing to sacrifice all those jobs for your pipe dream of so-called sovereignty? What is that sovereignty going to bring? He called for a bit more modesty and all sides, but comments sparked outcry, with Timmermans hit back, suggesting Brexiteers should have the courage to tell the people of Sunderland, my so-called liberty is more important than your jobs, the EU boss said. The bloc has been bending over backwards to reconcile Theresa May's red lines with the need to protect the single market and the integrity of the EU. He claimed Brussels had spared no effort when trying to negotiate with the UK. Brexit News: Frans Timmermans asks, are Brexiteers willing to pay the price for Brexit? Image EBS Live. 11:35 am. Update: Malthouse Amendment sparked fight. BBC's political editor Laura Kunsberg said May agreed to have a vote on the Malthouse Amendment after a big fat fight. She tweeted, was a big fat fight about this morning. Chief Whip said government would have to whip on everything other than first motion. Concern in Cabinet. Inc. from Defence Sec Gavin Williamson. This particular
fire has just been put out. 11:20 am. Update: EU prepares for no-deal Brexit. Bulgarian Prime Minister Boyko Borisov tweeted, the
spent great amount of time and resources to ensure a fair deal for pound Brexit and did its part of the process. Now we have to be ready for a non-deal scenario. 11:14 am. Update: breaking MPs to have free vote on Malthouse compromise. MPs will get free vote on Malthouse Amendment tonight following Brexiteer cabinet backlash triggered by news that PM was whipping against no deal, tabled by a group of Conservative MPs drawn from both Leave and Remain wings of the party. This amendment calls for a delay to Brexit Day from March 29 to May 22 to give time for preparations to leave without a deal. It says the government should then offer a standstill agreement with the EU and its member states, lasting up to the end of 2021 at the latest, during which the UK would pay into EU budgets and observe legal obligations while a permanent relationship is negotiated. 11:04 am. May is facing calls to resign. Tory MP Bob Stewart told Talk Radio the Prime Minister should leave office as soon as possible. 10:47 am. Update: Guy Verhofstadt calls for UK to get
out of this mess. He tweeted, I have always said
of the United Kingdom as in the European Union. I am sure a younger generation will one day take another
decision and bring Britain back into the European family. Slogan of the Brexiteers. Instead, it seems to be spinning out of control
all your energy into finding a cross-party majority to find a way out of this mess. There is no solution. If both big parties are using this existential issue as a bullet in a weapon against each other, Queen and country needs to come first. I hope a no deal is massively rejected today. Extension is known tomorrow. I am against any extension of Article 50, even for just 24 hours, if it is not based on a clear majority from the House of Commons in favour of something. 10:35 am. Update: FUROUS tells MEPs we want to govern ourselves. The former UKIP leader told MEPs, we have had enough. We have seen the snarling anger towards our country of Mr. Verhofstadt, the bureaucratic intransigence of Mr. Barnier, the constant stream of insults that come from Mr. Tusk, and we are of one mind. We don't want to be governed by you, we want to govern ourselves. Responding to Mr. Barnier's estimation of how long negotiations about the EU-UK future relationship could take, he said, we don't want to waste 4 more years of our life, 4 more years of agony. He called for any extension request from Britain to be vetoed, adding, we leave, and both you and we can get on with the rest of our lives. That's the only neat solution ahead of us. 10:14 am. Updates: Brexiteers could hijack EU elections. Verhofstadt warned the May European Parliament elections could be hijacked by the Brexiteers. 10:09 am. Update: Verhofstadt says Brexit is spinning out of control. He said Brexit was meant to be about taking back control, but the UK was instead spinning out of control. The European Parliament's Brexit coordinator admitted Brexit was a failure of the EU before predicting there will be a generation where the UK returns to the EU. Read more. Potential positives for no-deal Brexit revealed. Brexit news. Guy Verhofstadt said Brexit is spinning out of control. Image EBS Live. 10:01 a.m. update. Guy Verhofstadt appeals for certainty. The European Parliament's Brexit coordinator called for the UK to put Queen and country before party politics, appealing for certainty from the House of Commons. He told MEPs in Strasbourg, "That is what we need, and so I am against every extension, whether an extension of 1 day, 1 week, even 24 hours, if it's not based on a clear opinion of the House of Commons for something that we know what they want. Please make up your minds in London, because this uncertainty cannot continue. Not for us, not for Britain, and certainly not for our citizens." 9:52 a.m. update. Britain's no-deal tariff plans blasted as absolutely disastrous. British proposals to scrap tariffs on a wide range of imports in the event of a no-deal Brexit would be absolutely disastrous for Ireland's economy, the country's European Affairs Minister Helen McEntee has warned, unveiling details of a tariff plan that would last for up to 12 months. In the wake of a no-deal Brexit, the government said 87% of total imports of the United Kingdom by value would be eligible for tariff-free access, up from 80% now. But the rule changes will mean some products arriving from the remaining 27 EU member states which are exempted from tariffs will face levies for the first time. Speaking on RTE Morning Ireland, Ms McEntee said the no-deal tariffs were a lose-lose scenario for everyone. 9:33 a.m. update. Barnier leaves the ball in UK court. Mr Barnier said it was now the responsibility of the UK to suggest a way forward. He told the European Parliament, "They have to tell us what it is they want for the future relationship. What will the choice be? What will be the line they will take? That is the question we need a clear answer to now. That is the question that has to be answered before a decision on a possible further extension. Why would we extend these discussions? The discussion on Article 50 is done and dusted. We have the withdrawal agreement. It is there. That is the question asked, and we are waiting for an answer to that." Brexit news. Barnier says risk of no deal is higher than ever before. Image EBS Live. 9:37 a.m. update. Ireland says UK's no-deal tariffs disaster for Irish agriculture. Ireland's European Affairs Minister Helen McEntee warned British proposals to scrap tariffs on a wide range of imports in the event of a no-deal Brexit would be absolutely disastrous for Ireland's economy. Speaking on RTE Morning Ireland, Ms McEntee said the no-deal tariffs were a lose-lose scenario for everyone. 9:31 a.m. update. Barnier says Brexit deal is only available treaty. The EU's chief Brexit negotiator told the European Parliament that the withdrawal agreement reached last November is and will remain the only available treaty. In agreeing to draw up documents clarifying the terms of the agreement in Strasbourg on Monday, we went as far as we possibly could in order to help the UK government get the support of the House of Commons, said Mr Barnier. 9:29 a.m. update. Risk if no deal has never been higher. Michel Barnier, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, said the risk of no deal has never been higher, even by accident, in a disorderly fashion. I urge you not to underestimate that risk or its consequences. We now call on all those players in the EU, all member states. We are ready for this. We have never worked for this particular option. We don't want a no-deal in absence of an agreement. We have always worked towards an orderly Brexit. We are ready to face that situation if we have to, if there is no other agreement the way the treaty works, but risk of no deal is what we are facing. Brexit news. Theresa May suffered her second defeat. Image Express. 9:25 a.m. update. EU made a tremendous effort to get Brexit deal through. Frans Timmermans said it is now up to British MPs to explain the way forward. He said the Union would continue working for Brexit that does as little harm as possible, before telling MPs the solution will have to come from London. 9:22 a.m. update. Boris Johnson claims EU will offer new Brexit deal by March 29. The former Foreign Secretary told LBC Radio, "I covered a lot of EU summits. I have been to a lot of them in my time. I have seen how the EU works. The horses always change places in the final furlong. It's always at 5 minutes to midnight that the real deal is done. In Brussels the real fix is always in at the end. 9:15 AM update. FUROUS says EU is running scared. Posting on Twitter, the former UKIP leader said the EU's chief Brexit negotiator was scared of a no-deal Brexit. He said, "Have just come out of a meeting with Barnier and he is scared of a no-deal WTO Brexit. There is also huge pressure on Mrs. May, if she demands an extension, to give a firm reason why. There will be no blank check for it. I'll be speaking in the European Parliament shortly." Read more. No-deal Brexit tracker. Live Brexit news. FUROUS says the EU is running scared. Image. Twitter. 9:11 AM update. David E. Cameron warns no-deal Brexit disaster for UK. The former Conservative Prime Minister said he backed Theresa May's attempts to secure a deal despite her second overwhelming defeat in Parliament on Tuesday night. "I've always supported the Prime Minister in her attempts to have a close partnership deal with Europe and she continues to have my support," he told Sky News. "That's the right thing to do. Obviously what needs to happen next is to rule out no deal. That would be a disaster for our country, and to seek an extension. And I'm sure that's what's going to happen next." Asked if there should be a second referendum, Mr. Cameron replied, "What happened last night is some people who've always wanted Brexit have voted against it again, and this is exasperating for the Prime Minister, and I think she should feel free to look at other alternatives for partnership deals and the like in order to solve this problem, because you can't go on with a situation with people who want Brexit keep voting against it." 9:07 AM update. No-deal tariff regime would sledgehammer UK economy. CBI. The business industry warned the new tariff regime on EU products in the case of a no-deal Brexit will act as a sledgehammer to the UK economy. The new levies, to be imposed from the day after a March 29 Brexit if MPs vote for a no-deal withdrawal, would force up prices on EU imports including cars and many food products. CBI Director General Caroline Spelman told BBC Radio 4's Today, "This tells us everything that is wrong with a no-deal scenario. What we are hearing is the biggest change in terms of trade this country has faced since the mid-19th century, being imposed on this country with no consultation with business, no time to prepare. This is no way to run a country. What we potentially are going to see is this imposition of new terms of trade at the same time as business is blocked out of its closest trading partner. This is a sledgehammer for our economy." Brexit news. The UK is due to leave the EU on March 29. Image. Express. 8:56 AM update. Labour's priority is to secure a deal, Shadow Business Secretary Rebecca Long-Bailey told BBC Radio 4's Today. "Now I think it's the opportunity for Parliament to set the agenda and take control, because we have a government now which isn't in control." Asked if Labour would push for another motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister, she said it was something that we may consider in the future. Pressed on Labour's position on a second referendum, she said, "We have not ruled out a people's vote, but our priority is securing a deal." 8:38 AM update. Pound surges against euro and US dollar. The pound is surging against the euro and US dollar after a day of Brexit chaos that saw the British currency fluctuate wildly. Pound sterling is up 0.42% against the euro to 1.1632 euros, according to Bloomberg, having jumped nearly half a percentage point in early morning trading on Tuesday to 1.1748 euros. Like the US dollar, the British currency slumped against the euro following Mr. Cox's announcement, down to 1.1558 euros, but sterling has started to recover against both major currencies after Mrs. May suffered a crushing 149 meaningful vote defeat on her Brexit deal in the House of Commons last night. Read more. Brexit no-deal preparations revealed. Brexit news. Guy Verhofstadt ruled out a Brexit extension. Image. NC 8:23 AM update. Guy Verhofstadt reacts with outrage speaking at May's defeat. The EU boss rejected an extension of the Brexit deal, he told reporters. "We don't start to talk about an extension. We don't see any reason to give any extension if All we don't know what the position is of the majority of the House of Commons. Exasperated, he added, why? Why should we start to give even a short extension, if there is no clear position of the House of Commons? 8:11 a.m. Oparte. Amber Rudd speaks ahead of tonight's no-deal vote. Work and Pensions Secretary Amber Rudd told Sky News it's a free vote, so everybody can do as they think is the best thing for the country. I know what I think, which is that leaving without a deal would be very bad for our economy, very bad for our security. But overall I'm just very disappointed that so many of my colleagues decided not to vote for the withdrawal agreement yesterday, which was a good deal, a sensible way of leaving the European Union and delivering on the referendum. Brexit news. Theresa May suffered a humiliating second defeat. Image EPA. 8:07 a.m. update. Germany's car industry could be hammered by a no-deal Brexit. Tariffs. Imports from Angela Merkel's nation could be hit as the unilateral and temporary regime includes levies of 10.6% on European cars and trucks which had previously been free of tariffs. This could potentially increasing the cost of a typical family hatchback by around £1,500. Car parts would face no extra tariffs to avoid disruption to supply chains. The plan also introduces tariffs on EU goods like beef, chicken, lamb, pork and cheddar-style cheese if MPs vote to leave without a deal. 8:03 a.m. update. Zero tariffs on EU goods coming into Northern Ireland. May's government will not introduce any new checks or controls on goods moving across the land border into Northern Ireland if the UK leaves the European Union without a deal, it has been announced. Under a temporary and unilateral regime announced by the government, EU goods arriving from the Republic and remaining in Northern Ireland will not be subject to tariffs. However, tariffs will be payable on goods moving from the EU into the rest of the UK via Northern Ireland under a schedule of rates also released on Wednesday. The government insists that this will not create a border down the Irish Sea, as there will be no checks on goods moving between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. 7:56 a.m. update. May ramps up plans for no-deal Brexit. Britain will slash tariffs on a range of imports from outside the EU if MPs vote on Wednesday to leave without a deal. But some products coming from the remaining 27 EU member states which are currently imported free of tariffs will now face levies for the first time. Ministers said that, overall, the changes would represent a modest liberalisation of the UK's tariff regime. Under a unilateral temporary scheme announced by the government, 87% of all imports of the UK by value would be eligible for zero tariff access, up from 80% at present, while many other goods will be subject to a lower rate than currently applied under EU rules. In special arrangements for Northern Ireland, the UK's temporary import tariffs will not apply to EU goods crossing the border from the Republic. Brexit news. MPs will vote on a no-deal Brexit last night. Image Getty. 7:43 a.m. update. Barnier speaks after May's deal rejected, speaking in Strasbourg, where the European Parliament is gathering for a debate on Brexit ahead of the next European Council summit. The EU's chief negotiator Michel Barnier said, again, the House of Commons says what it doesn't want. Now this impasse can only be solved in the UK. 7:38 a.m. update. EU leaders react with fury. Diplomats warned they were prepared to cut Britain loose after May's Brexit deal defeat, one told The Times. Behind the scenes, people are increasingly saying that it is better to call it quits, to have a clean break and start again. Additional reporting by Maria Ortega.